I'm back, baby. I'm back from the dead. If you missed it, and hopefully you did, I got hacked on Twitter. I got God. I'm an idiot. I take full responsibility. I got hacked. And I'm not even posting on hold on. All right, this is terrific. I'm gonna end this. Because I'm an idiot. Hold on. Great. See if this changes. All right. I'm back. I'm back, baby. If you missed it, and hopefully you did, I got hacked. I'm an idiot. I take full responsibility. I got. I clicked on a link that I shouldn't have clicked. I thought I was able to get out of it, but I'm back. And this is my first stream in about a week. There's plenty to talk about. There's a bunch of things that I want to cover. I want to talk about the cat report today, about him feeling disillusioned or whatever the word is with the Knicks. He's pissed off because they involved him in Giannis conversations in the summer. Hasn't been the same. Going to talk about the Giannis situation and him essentially requesting a trade. And then I want to get into some Giants offensive coordinator candidates, after the fact that, Todd Monken became or was announced as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. That was John Harbaugh's number one option. He's off the board. I've got three guys that I like that I think the Giants couldn't go wrong with. We're going to get into that at the end. I want to start with the latest news out of all this, which is the report that we saw this morning from Sam Amick, I think it's Sam Amick, about Karl-Anthony Towns, a report that explains a lot. And it was, if you missed it, essentially that Cat feels slighted by the Knicks organization because, and honestly, hold on, I want to put this up here. Apex, big fan. What's up, Apex? Yeah, Cashman. I'm going to get into the Cashman stuff. I might do a standalone live stream on that. There's just a lot to discuss with that. I need to do a little bit more research into that. I've been focused on this Knicks and Giannis stuff. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with the Giannis. I guess, I'll do the Cat because it's kind of connected to Giannis. Then I'll get into Giannis. But yeah, check that out tomorrow. I'll probably do a live stream on Cashman. Very disappointed in those comments. Let's talk Cat. So again, I was just talking about this, that Cat feels slighted by the Knicks because they included him in conversations that they had with the Bucks about a trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this came out, I think, I want to say around October, November. Shams reported that the Knicks and the Bucks this past summer had an exclusive negotiating period for Giannis after Giannis told the Bucks that his desired destination was the Knicks. So they had talks. They didn't advance very far, and to no one's surprise, because the Knicks, in my opinion, do not have anywhere near enough in a potential offer for Giannis. But I'm going to get into that. Is anyone surprised by this? Is anyone surprised that soft-ass Karl-Anthony Towns was upset with the Knicks organization because they included him in trade offers? Like, that's never happened before. Like, no other star player has been included in trade discussions for a better player than that star. Think about all the Knicks players in the past that have been included in trade talks. Most recently, Mitchell Robinson, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley. Everyone throughout the 2010s that was included in trade talks for all these different superstars, none of those players, at least it was reported, had an issue with being included in these trade talks. And none of those guys, after being included in said trade talks, came out and played the worst basketball of their careers. And that is what we are currently witnessing from Giannis. I got my guys mixed up. And that's what we're currently missing. We're seeing from Karl-Anthony Towns, who is shooting the worst he ever has in his career from the field, from three. He's committed more offensive fouls than anyone else in the NBA. And he has been a shell of himself offensively for the past month and sporadically throughout the entire season. This explains a lot. It does. There are a multitude of reasons that you could think that Karl Anthony Towns is not playing good basketball. I mean, he seems like a very effective person. And speaking from experience, I'm a very effective person as well, but I'm no NBA superstar. I'm not a guy that gets paid $50 million a year. I cannot say that I'm surprised by this report. I cannot say that I'm surprised at Karl Anthony Towns' disdain for the Knicks organization for including him in trade talks. And I'm not surprised whatsoever that this is the result. He is playing pathetically. There has been no bigger critic of Karl Anthony Towns than myself. And there have been a lot of critics of Cat. I don't think the Knicks are ever going to win anything with him. I think he's inept defensively. I think when he doesn't have it going offensively, he doesn't play defense. Last night was somewhat of an exception, but he did pull down 20 plus rebounds. The Knicks cannot rely on him. We have seen repeatedly over the past month or again sporadically throughout the season, the Knicks play better with Cat off the floor. And the counting stats on paper look amazing. You know, he's averaging another 20 and 10 points, 20 and 10 season, 20 points, 10 plus rebounds a game. He's a really solid defensive rebounder. That doesn't make up for the lack of effort that we've seen throughout this season. And the most pertinent example, I guess is the correct word. The most memorable example was against the Kings a couple of weeks ago in Sacramento. Cat just didn't get back on defense, stayed down on the floor way longer than he should have. And last night too. Or the game before. I'm getting my games mixed up with like Cat not getting back on defense. This is becoming a concerning trend. And now Sam Amick comes out and says the quiet part out loud. That Karl Anthony Towns is pissed off at the Knicks organization and is upset with them for including him in Giannis trade talks. This is a guy making $50+ million. There's a reason why you're being included in these trade talks. Don't you understand that? Wouldn't that be added motivation to play harder? Wouldn't that be a thing where you look at, oh, okay, the Knicks clearly think that they could get a better option than me. I'm going to prove them wrong. And it's the opposite. It's had the opposite effect on him. And this doesn't come as a surprise to me. I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise to any of you. Karl Anthony Towns is a soft-ass player. His personality, his demeanor does not fit this city. If you've been listening to me, if you've been watching me on YouTube, I have been very consistent on this one thing. That it applies across all sports, across all cities, historically. Certain teams in certain cities win a certain way. We've seen it with the Giants. How have they won in the past? Game-wrecking pass rushes. The ability to get to the quarterback. The ability to upset teams because they get to the quarterback. That's what the Giants are. The Knicks have had success in the past from playing hard-nosed, physical, bruising basketball. Karl Anthony Towns can't even post up Russell Westbrook successfully, much less any big center in the NBA. He essentially has no post game. I can't remember the last time I saw him take a post fade. He's not able to get into position. Where's the drop step? And again, we saw the other night, he literally couldn't get past. He couldn't body Russell Westbrook, a guy who's almost a foot shorter than him. This is the antithesis of what the Knicks have been and what they're supposed to be. And this softness, this lack of physicality does not fit the identity of this city. And it doesn't just extend to Cat. And this is not the topic for today, but Mikal Bridges is a very similar player. And this is kind of bad timing considering what we saw from him last night. Scoring 30 points on unbelievable efficiency. But you catch my drift. The Knicks made catastrophic mistakes with their trades for Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. They did. And they're trying to save face by going out and acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo, which is a pipe dream. It's never happening. At least this season, maybe during the offseason. But this leads me directly into my next topic, which is Giannis. Which, if you don't live under a rock, you saw it. You saw yesterday that Giannis has essentially asked out from Milwaukee. The writing was on the wall. Didn't take a rocket scientist to predict that this was going to happen. They are a mess. Giannis wants out. And, of course, as we've known for months, the Knicks have a lot of interest. They have submitted proposals. The Heat has submitted proposals. All these different teams are in on Giannis. And the Knicks just simply do not have enough. Sorry to break it to you. Sorry to break it to you that Karl-Anthony Towns has not had a good enough year for him to be included in that trade talk. Sorry to burst your bubble that's not what the Bucks are looking for. The Knicks don't have what they're looking for because they traded for Mikal Bridges. They didn't have the foresight to understand that at some point Giannis Antetokounmpo would ask out. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because, yeah, the Bucks are a mess right now, but I called that 2 years ago. I called it. After the Knicks had traded for Bridges and after they had traded for Karl-Anthony Towns, I said it. Before the season started, before the 24-25 season started, I said, this team is as fraudulent as any team in all of sports. And boy, was I proven right. But the second superstar, Damian Lillard, was stretched and waived. They didn't get anything for him. They lost their picks. They traded them away to the Trailblazers, and they got nothing for Damian Lillard. And Giannis gets hurt in the playoffs, and they don't go anywhere. And then going into the season, I thought they were even more fraudulent than last season. Everyone's like, oh, but they signed Miles Turner. Terrific. Congratulations. I don't know if there was anyone stupid enough to say that that was enough to put them over the top. This was always coming to a head. This was always going to happen. And again, the Knicks are involved in conversations. Their pipe dreams never going to happen. But the Knicks have to do their due diligence here. They just don't have what the Bucks are looking for. And there are other teams that do. There are some teams that are unwilling to part with young stars. Some teams that don't have enough picks. Some teams that do have enough picks. Some teams that have enough picks and young talent, but are unwilling to do that because they don't want to break up their current cores. So this is a difficult situation for the Bucks. It is. Because, of course, they are looking for the best package. But teams who might have the best packages are unwilling to trade for a guy that isn't willing to say if he's going to re-sign with them or not. So that's a whole nother wrench in all of this. And I think the only chance the Knicks get Giannis is if Giannis looks John Horst, the Bucks president of basketball operations, directly in the face and says, I will only re-sign with the Knicks. You have to trade me to the Knicks. Now, do I think that that's out of the realm of possibility? No. There's obviously a non-zero chance of that happening. But do I think it's likely? No. I think that there's a certain partialness from Giannis to the Bucks. As well as, of course, vice versa, where Giannis isn't going to screw over the Bucks where they are unable to get a good enough return so they can rebuild. The Bucks and their fan base have embraced Giannis as one of their own. He will always be a legend in the city of Milwaukee. He might be a top 5 Milwaukeean to ever live in that city. In terms of impact, he might be top 3. He's a legend in that city, and there hasn't been any report on this, but I do think, based on human nature, that he'd feel partial to the organization that drafted him, and the organization that developed him into a 2-time MVP and a top 20 player in NBA history. Now, there's, of course, the flip side of that, where he feels, well, you guys didn't do enough to adequately build around me to stay competitive after we won the championship in 2021. You made an idiotic trade where you traded away Drew Holiday and completely changed the identity of the team and killed any sort of defensive prowess that they had. So there is a certain dichotomy from Giannis with the Bucks that I don't think anyone can predict as of this moment. I think the only person who has the answer behind that is Giannis. So it's obviously something to keep an eye on. I look at a team like Toronto that has more to spend on Giannis if they're willing to part with Scotty Barnes. I just made a TikTok on that. I think that that's the dark horse candidate for Giannis. It's just all going to be about if they're willing to part with Scotty Barnes. But again, the inevitable happened. We're all going to keep an eye on this. The trade deadline's in a week. Do I see Giannis being moved before then? No. This report didn't come out, as far in advance of the trade deadline as the Bucks need to get as much as they possibly can get for Giannis. I think that they want teams to have months to prepare for the possibility to trade for Giannis. I think that the Bucks want the rest of the season to play out for teams to figure out whether they want to retool, whether they want to rebuild and take themselves out of the Giannis sweepstakes, like the Heat, or if they decide, hey, we're closer than we thought, we're going to make an all-in move for Giannis now. I think it's highly unlikely that any team trades for Giannis midseason. I just don't know how the rest of the season is going to go down with Giannis and the Bucks. Will he even play? Will he even try? A la Karl-Anthony Towns? If he plays, it remains to be seen. But again, I don't think he's going to get traded before the deadline. It doesn't make sense for the Bucks to do that. Just not going to happen. I think that they're going to have to be willing to live with the awkwardness and whatever else stems from Giannis, who clearly wants out, staying on the Bucks, staying on the bench the next 4 months. It's going to be weird. It will. Or I guess it would only be 2.5 months, which is not that long. And Giannis self-diagnosed himself with a calf strain. He'll be out another 4 weeks at least. But yeah, I just don't think he's going to get traded midseason. Remains to be seen. Keep an eye on it. It's not going to be the next, though, at least midseason. And even then, it's almost impossible. They're going to get him in the offseason. They are going to be able to trade their 2033 first round pick. They can't trade now. That would be like one of their only unprotected first round picks they could trade because of the stipend rule. They traded away the majority of their picks to the Nets. Of course, you all know that. They could trade all their swaps, and they could trade their 2033 first round unprotected pick. This offseason, I still don't think that that's enough to get it done. I just don't see a likelihood that Karl-Anthony Towns is going to turn it around enough for the Bucks to be like, okay, we'll take Karl-Anthony Towns. I just don't see that as a likelihood whatsoever. But enough about Giannis. Enough about Cat, his soft ass. Let's get into my top options for Giants offensive coordinators. Todd Monken hired as the Cleveland Browns' new head coach. That was the de facto offensive coordinator for the New York Giants, worked with Harbaugh. in Baltimore for years. That was the guy. If he didn't take the head coach spot, of course, he's going to, being a head coach in the NFL it's a big deal. There's only 32 of those spots, and he decided to take that. So now the Giants have a multitude of options to pick from. They can go with a more established guy like Cliff Kingsbury, or they can go with a few unproven guys. And if you've listened to me talk about other sports, particularly the NBA, going into this season, I wanted the Knicks to hire an unproven assistant coach who had a chip on their shoulder to go out and prove themselves and help take the Knicks to the promised land. I didn't want them to hire an established head coach, and they did exactly what I didn't want them to do, even though I was happy with the Mike Brown hiring because it wasn't Tom Thibodeau. But I digress. I feel the exact same way about the Giants when it comes to the possibility after them not getting Todd Monken. And I feel like my prayers are going to get answered here. Cliff Kingsbury is not a part of my top three. He is not. Because again, I want a younger guy. I want a younger, unproven guy who is dying to take the reins of an offense. A guy who has learned under a top offensive coordinator, a top head coach, and wants to go out there and prove himself. And I trust John Harbaugh wholeheartedly to find and identify young, up-and-coming talent in terms of coaching. And I'm going to give you my top three options. They are, three guys that have been put out there a lot by Giants creators, and they are considered the front runners. I think Cliff Kingsbury is up there as well, but as I mentioned a multitude of times here, he is not a part of my top three. So in no particular order, let's start with my first option. Again, no particular order. I don't know why I'm saying first option, but here we go. Davis Webb, Giants draft pick in 2017, third round draft pick, ended up playing a few games. And I believe 2021, he threw the touchdown pass to Kenny Golladay. Kenny Galladay's only touchdown reception with the Giants ever. He's the most recently, he is now the quarterback's coach and passing game coordinator for the Broncos. He was promoted in 2025 after helping Bo Nix turn into the quarterback that he did, being, I wouldn't say, he was obviously unproven, but a guy that a lot of people overlooked in the draft. I particularly didn't want the Giants to even look at him. He comes out and looks like one of the top 3 or 4 rookies, and it didn't look amazing to start this last year, but really came into his own later on in the season, led the Broncos to a AFC Championship game that they very well could have won if he didn't break his ankle. Davis Webb deserves a lot of credit in developing Bo Nix. He coached in Denver, of course, under Sean Payton, one of the best offensive minds in NFL history, you think you could say. Again, he was drafted by the Giants in 2017. He's got familiarity with the organization. I think that there is some value in that, but Davis Webb is 31 years old. He's 31. The majority of quarterbacks in the NFL, the top quarterbacks, are his age or older. Matt Stafford is 7, 8 years older than Davis Webb. So he's very young. That's the biggest knock on him. And the other knock is all right, well, maybe he needs to develop himself a little bit more as a coach in the NFL. And that's a valid knock on him. He's very unproven. 31 years old, 31, but he's a guy who has gotten a lot of looks as a potential offensive coordinator around the league. So there's a certain level of respect that he has commanded amongst organizations in order to, to find their next offensive coordinator. He's a good option. I like him a lot. The one big knock on him is that, again, he's 31 years old. But I kind of like that youth. I kind of like the idea of a young offensive coordinator growing alongside a young quarterback. I think that could work out. I guess we'll see. But again, Webb has never called plays which is somewhat concerning. And there's no guarantee that he's going to be a good play caller, but he's been a former quarterback, so he obviously knows schemes and has called audibles and has called his own offense at times. All right, number 2, and my apologies if I don't pronounce this correctly, but it's Nate Skilhaas. Skilhaas, I believe. You got to correct me if I'm wrong there, and I will get it right. I promise you by the next time I talk about him, especially if he's hired as the next offensive coordinator for the Giants. Nate, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name again, is the LA Rams passing game coordinator. 35 years old. He's a Sean McVay disciple. That is, if you're talking about guys in the NFL that you want to hire in terms of their coaching tree, Sean McVay is at the top of that list. There was no one more respected around the league. Guy who's won a Super Bowl. Guy who just came extremely close to making another one. And someone who is like, he's a top name. He's one of the most respected guys. So Skilhaas, he's another one of these guys alongside Davis Webb, whose reputation is growing by the day. He was the offense coordinator for Iowa State, then hired by the Rams. He's involved in the game planning, Sean McVay's offense. We saw Matt Stafford have perhaps the best season of his career in his late 30s. And this passing game, it ranks extremely high league-wide every year. Skilhaas was a former college quarterback who transitioned like Davis Webb directly into coaching. And again, the biggest positive behind Skilhaas is him coaching under Sean McVay. Like, that's it. I think that puts him up a peg. He understands one of the most consistent offensive schemes in the NFL. And maybe he could bring that experience working under Sean McVay to the Giants, a team that, guys, like, it's a really good offensive core. Like, I think it's one thing to bring in an unproven offensive mind as an offensive coordinator on a team that has nothing. Of course, they're going to struggle out of the gate. But having a younger, unproven guy come into a situation with a quarterback who showed a lot of promise last year, a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, knock on wood that he comes back to play as well as he did before he got injured the year before, and league neighbors, Cam Scatterbo, Wan'Dale Robinson, depending on what they decide to do with him, and they got a top 5 pick, and there's no telling what they're going to do. Maybe they take Cardell Tate. Maybe they take Tyson. No one knows what they're going to do. But both of these two guys have learned under top offensive minds in let's say NFL history. Sean McVay is there. And he's still so young. He can coach for another 25 years. Straight up. It's insane. I think about that a lot. Like Sean McVay being already a top offensive mind in NFL history. It's just crazy. But the knock on both these two top guys is they haven't called plays. They haven't been play callers in the NFL. But they both have training under top guys. Here's the third option, someone who's been thrown out there a lot. It's Charlie Weiss Jr., a guy who's got a lot of camaraderie with Jackson Dart, being his former offensive coordinator with Ole Miss. He was their offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach with Ole Miss from 2022 to 2025. Of course, coaching Jackson Dart. He's got the chemistry already built with him. He has called plays. Another really young guy. 33 years old. This might be the best option. It might be. All things considered, I mean, the only knock on him is that he hasn't learned under a top NFL offensive mind like the first two options. But, I mean, the chemistry that he's built with Jackson Dart is intriguing. Like, don't get me wrong. That might be the biggest positive out of all three of these candidates. They have the familiarity. Jackson Dart is comfortable with him. But Charlie Weiss Jr. didn't learn under those top offensive minds. And he doesn't have NFL coaching experience besides in 2017 being an assistant coach. Brief stint. But he's got the elite play design. He's very familiar with the dual threat quarterback like Jackson Dart is. A college level scheme that might need to be implemented with the Giants, the read option, the RPO. Because Jackson Dart, what sets him apart for everyone else and what largely contributed to his early season success was his ability to tuck the ball and run. So, and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing people are forgetting. John Harbaugh, lest we forget, John Harbaugh did something that no team has done, arguably, in NFL history, and completely tailor an offense around an unpolished college quarterback who has implemented a college-level scheme successfully into an NFL offense, which, of course, with Lamar Jackson, a guy who went at the end of the first round, he had the raw talent. He had the agility. He had the elusiveness that we've never seen from any quarterback coming out of college. His arm was unproven. But over the years, he learned. And he developed into that system, developed into a two-time MVP. And I think John Harbaugh might look at Charlie Weiss Jr. and be like, we're going to run this back. I'm going to do exactly what I did in Baltimore now in New York. And we're going to hire a guy who has experience as an offensive coordinator in college football for Jackson Dart as our new offensive coordinator. And here's the thing. The last thing I'll say is that I trust John Harbaugh to identify an offensive coordinator more than I've ever trusted any coach of any team that I've ever rooted for to hire an assistant coach. Like, you might point out, oh, well, he didn't have a backup option to Monken. Well, he's been interviewing other guys. Yeah, Monken was the guy because Monken has been Harbaugh's offensive coordinator for multiple years. They've got the camaraderie. They've worked together for years. Of course, that was the number one option. Of course, that was, the guy. But those are the three guys. Webb, Skilhaas. That actually sounds right. The Skilhaas. All the other pronunciation, that definitely sounds the most. And Charlie Weiss Jr. Those are the three guys. Three most, my three top options. Three of the four most likely guys. I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to get a look, being the experienced offensive coordinator, being the offensive coordinator, being the head coach of Kyler Murray, being the offensive coordinator for Jaden Daniels, two dual threat quarterbacks. I think that plays a large factor in this. Like, excuse me, I'm on a time crunch today. I got to work out after this. There is, of course, value in hiring a Cliff Kingsbury. He was just fired. He's gone. He's no longer the offensive coordinator of the Commanders. That is just what has confounded me from teams' decisions in the past. Let's go out and hire a former offensive coordinator who was fired. He was fired. And most of the time for good reason, unless we're talking about incompetent organizations. I don't think you could say the Commanders are an incompetent organization. Yes, they had issues with injuries. Jaden Daniels missed more than half the season. And yeah, Marcus Mariota looked pretty good. But either way, he was fired. And for a reason. This is exactly how I felt with the Knicks hiring Mike Brown, the guy who lost the locker room in Sacramento the year before. You know, like, you know what? Screw it. Let's hire Mike Brown to coach a guy like Karl Anthony Towns. Surely that couldn't go wrong. Surely there can't be any vitriol between the two. Newsflash, that's what happened. All right, that'll do it. I apologize if I'm all over the place. My first live in a while. I'm very happy that I got my Twitter back. I thought that there was a chance I'd never see it again. Uh, I can't believe I got like that. I can't believe I did that. You know, if you know me personally, I went to Syracuse and I applied to get into Newhouse. I didn't get into Newhouse. I got into my backup choice, which was the I school. I decided to go, and I'm like, screw it. We'll see what happens. I ended up transferring into Newhouse, but I took 3 semesters of information technology courses, and it ended up being my minor. And the last 2 courses I took, one of them was cybersecurity class, and they had about a month of teaching about how to not fall for phishing and not fall for that kind of stuff, and I still did. I'll never live that one down. But I listen. I learned my lesson, but I got extremely lucky, and I got the Twitter account back, so this was good. I'm glad I was able to come on here and share my thoughts about all this different things that I talked about. But more stuff coming your way. One Giant Step with Sean Morash coming out tonight. Believe we're going to record later. Stay tuned for that. That'll be fun. Bunch of stuff to talk about. We never talked about the Giants hiring of their defensive coordinator. So check that out. I got my first thoughts about Denard Wilson. That'll be fun. So check that out. Coming your way later tonight, tomorrow morning. But thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Thanks.